I knew something was different about that house the moment I pulled up outside. This was my third cleaning job of the day in a nice suburb of Brighton, and I'd seen plenty of fancy homes before, but nothing quite like this. The front garden looked like someone had emptied an entire theme park gift shop onto the lawn. Stone statues of that famous glass-slippered princess and that big-eared mouse stood guard by the pathway. A hand-painted wooden sign hung near the gate. "Welcome to the happiest place on earth," complete with little hearts and stars painted around the edges. I remember thinking it was a bit much but sweet in a way. Maybe they had young kids who were mad about fairy tales. My own daughter Emma had gone through that phase a few years back. Everything had to be pink and sparkly and every bedtime story had to have a princess in it. As I grabbed my cleaning supplies from the boot, I noticed even the doormat had cartoon characters grinning up at me. A polka-dotted mouse with a big red bow. I couldn't help but smile back at it. The whole setup felt cheerful, inviting even. Like stepping into a children's birthday party that never ended. The key was under the flower pot, exactly where Mrs. Patterson had said it would be. She'd rung me the week before, found my number through a cleaning service I sometimes work with. Said she needed someone reliable, someone discreet, someone who could keep to themselves. The way she'd emphasized that last bit had seemed odd at the time, but I needed the work. I turned the key and pushed open the door. The smell hit me straight away. Sickly sweet, like someone had gone absolutely mental with one of those plug-in air fresheners. Cotton candy mixed with vanilla and something else I couldn't quite place. It wasn't unpleasant exactly, just overwhelming. The sort of smell that's nice for about 30 seconds before it starts making your head ache. The hallway stretched out in front of me, and honest to God, I'd never seen anything like it. Every single wall was covered in posters of animated princesses and castles. Fairy lights twinkled along the ceiling even though it was 2 in the afternoon. Stuffed toys lined the floor on both sides, dozens of them, all staring with their glassy little eyes. I stood there for a moment just taking it all in. It reminded me of those American houses you see in films, the ones that go absolutely barmy with Christmas decorations. Except this wasn't Christmas. This was just Tuesday. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick photo. Emma would love this, I thought. Maybe a bit over the top but harmless fun. I had no idea how wrong I was. I started with the main bedroom because Mrs. Patterson had been very specific about that in her instructions. "Get that one done first," she'd said. "Make sure everything's perfect." The door had a sign on it shaped like a crown with "Royal Chamber" written in swirly gold letters. When I pushed it open, I actually gasped. The room looked like someone had turned a children's fairy tale book into a real space. Everything was pink or purple or covered in glitter. A 4-poster bed draped with sheer fabric stood in the center, and a proper vintage dressing table sat against one wall, the kind you'd see in a posh antique shop. The dressing table was cluttered with makeup. Children's makeup sets, the cheap kind you buy at toy shops. Bright blue eyeshadow, sticky lip gloss in every color you could imagine. But mixed in with all that were expensive brands. I recognized some from the department stores in town. Foundation that cost 50 quid a bottle sitting right next to plastic compacts with cartoon characters on them. I started dusting carefully, trying not to knock anything over. The whole room felt like a museum display, like everything had been positioned just so. On the shelves were dozens of dolls, all in fancy dresses. Some of them had such realistic eyes that it made me uncomfortable to look at them too long. The way their glassy stares seemed to follow me around the room. I was hoovering the carpet when I heard a sharp crack from the wardrobe. Probably something had fallen inside, I thought. I opened the doors to check, but everything looked fine. Just rows and rows of dresses. Not children's dresses, though. These were adult-sized costumes, the expensive kind. Ball gowns in every color, all organized by shade like a rainbow. Blue, yellow, pink, green. Each one looked like it cost hundreds of pounds. I reached out and touched one of the blue dresses. The fabric was incredible. Nothing like the cheap polyester princess costumes they sell for kids. This was silk or something close to it. And it smelled strange. Strong perfume, the grown-up kind, not sweet like the rest of the house. It didn't fit with the atmosphere at all. Something about it made my skin crawl. I shut the wardrobe doors quickly and went back to hoovering, but my mind was racing. Why would someone have a room decorated like a child's bedroom but filled with adult clothes? Maybe it was for parties, I told myself. Maybe Mrs. Patterson hosted events for children and dressed up to entertain them. But that didn't explain the weird mix of cheap kids' makeup and expensive cosmetics. It didn't explain why everything felt so staged, so carefully arranged. I tried to push the thoughts away and focus on my work. I dusted the windowsills, wiped down the mirrors, changed the bedding like I'd been asked to. But the whole time I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The room was too perfect, too deliberate. It wasn't a child's bedroom. It was someone's idea of what a child's bedroom should look like. And that distinction, small as it was, made all the difference. The bathroom was next on my list, and somehow it was even more elaborate than the bedroom. The tiles had been hand-painted with underwater scenes. Little mermaids and seahorses and shells covered every surface. The towels were turquoise with cartoon fish embroidered on them. Even the soap was shaped like a starfish, sitting in a shell-shaped dish. I'd cleaned some posh houses in my time, but this was something else entirely. It must have cost an absolute fortune to get all this custom work done. Every detail was so precise, so thought out. Nothing was accidental here. I started with the mirror, wiping away the water spots and toothpaste specks. In the reflection I could see myself looking tired. It had been a long day already, and I still had 2 more houses to get to after this one. My back was starting to ache from all the bending and scrubbing. When I crouched down to clean under the sink, I found something that didn't match the rest of the bathroom's theme. Behind the pink towels and the glittery toothbrush holder was a black metal box. Small, maybe the size of a shoebox, with a proper padlock on it. I picked it up out of curiosity. It was heavy, surprisingly so. I gave it a gentle shake and something solid shifted inside. Not money, the weight was wrong for that. Not jewelry either. Something denser. For a moment I considered trying to open it. But that wasn't my job, was it? I was here to clean, not to snoop through people's private things. Still, I couldn't help wondering what someone would keep locked away in a bathroom full of children's decorations. Important documents maybe? Family heirlooms? I put the box back exactly where I'd found it and continued cleaning. But my mind kept drifting back to it as I scrubbed the sink and polished the taps. Why hide something in here of all places? Why not in a bedroom drawer or a proper safe? The bathroom counter was cluttered with more of those plastic children's cups, the kind with cartoon characters printed on them. One had that snow princess everyone loves. Inside it, instead of a toothbrush, were 4 tubes of lipstick. Expensive ones, the kind with the fancy brand names that my sister was always going on about. Each one was a different shade of red, from bright cherry to deep wine. That same odd contrast again. Children's things mixed with adult possessions. Cheap plastic next to luxury cosmetics. It was like 2 completely different people lived in the same house, using the same spaces. I finished up quickly after that, suddenly eager to move on to the next room. The bathroom might have looked cheerful with all its bright colors and playful decorations, but it left me feeling uneasy. Like I'd walked into someone else's private fantasy and wasn't meant to understand it. As I gathered my cleaning supplies and headed back into the hallway, I noticed there was one more door at the end of the corridor. It was closed, unlike all the others which had been left open. No cute sign on this one, no decoration at all. Just a plain white door with a brass handle. According to Mrs. Patterson's instructions, I was meant to clean every room in the house. But she hadn't specifically mentioned that door, and something told me I should leave it alone. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, my hand hovering near the handle. Common sense told me to skip it, finish up the other rooms and get out. But curiosity is a powerful thing, isn't it? And I'd already come this far. My hand touched the brass handle before I could talk myself out of it. I expected it to be locked, honestly. That would have been the easy answer, the one that let me walk away with a clear conscience. But when I pressed down, the latch clicked and the door swung inward with a soft creak. The air inside was different immediately. Stale, like the windows hadn't been opened in weeks. The sickly sweet smell from the rest of the house was stronger here, almost choking. But underneath it was something else. Something chemical and sharp that caught in the back of my throat. The walls were painted the same cheerful colors as the other rooms. More posters of castles and cartoon princesses. Fairy lights strung along the ceiling just like in the hallway. But the furniture was all wrong. This wasn't set up like a child's playroom at all. In the center of the room stood a large bed, but it wasn't the kind you'd find in a kid's bedroom. Black satin sheets, way too many pillows. The headboard was upholstered in dark red velvet. Next to it sat a small table with bottles of things I recognized from the chemist. Baby oil. Lotion. Other products I didn't want to think too hard about. My stomach started to twist. I should have left right then. Should have backed out of that room, closed the door and pretended I'd never opened it. But I couldn't seem to move. My feet stayed planted on the carpet while my eyes took in details I didn't want to see. There were cameras. Small ones mounted in the corners of the ceiling, their little red lights blinking steadily. Professional equipment, not the sort of security cameras you'd install to watch for burglars. These were positioned to capture the bed from multiple angles. Against the far wall stood several tripods, collapsed and leaning together. Next to them were those big umbrella lights I'd seen in a photography studio once when I'd had Emma's school photos done. Except these were aimed at the bed, not at a backdrop with a fake bookshelf painted on it. A clothing rack stood in the corner, the kind you see in department store changing rooms. Hanging from it were costumes. Adult-sized costumes. I recognized them from the films Emma used to watch. The yellow ball gown. The blue dress with the white apron. The green one with the purple shell necklace. All of them were made from expensive fabric, properly tailored, not cheap Halloween knockoffs. There was a makeup station too, lit up like something from a theater dressing room. Wigs on foam heads lined the shelf above it. Long blonde ones, short brown ones, red ones with ribbons already tied in them. Each one styled perfectly like they'd been done by a professional. My hands had gone cold. That feeling you get when your body knows something's wrong before your brain fully catches up. I'd been doing cleaning jobs for 15 years. I'd seen plenty of odd things in people's homes. Collections that seemed strange, rooms dedicated to unusual hobbies, the occasional bit of adult entertainment left lying about. You learn not to judge, to mind your own business and get on with the work. But this was different. This wasn't just strange or embarrassing. This was deliberate. Calculated. The whole house suddenly made horrible sense. The children's decorations weren't for children at all. They were props. Set dressing. The entire place was a film set disguised as a home. I backed toward the door slowly, careful not to touch anything else. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. One of those cameras had definitely caught me coming in. Maybe it was recording right now. Maybe someone was watching. The door seemed miles away even though it was only a few steps behind me. I pulled the door shut as quietly as I could manage with shaking hands. My first instinct was to run straight out of the house, leave my cleaning supplies behind, just get in my car and drive away. But I forced myself to think clearly. If I bolted now, they'd know I'd seen something. They'd know I'd been in that room. So I went back to work. I cleaned the kitchen on autopilot, barely registering what I was doing. Wiped down surfaces I'd probably already cleaned. Moved things around without really seeing them. My mind was stuck on that room, on what it all meant, on who might be watching the footage from those cameras. The kitchen was decorated like everything else. Cartoon characters on the tea towels, colorful prints of castles and carriages on the walls. A biscuit tin shaped like a pumpkin coach sat on the counter. Everything so bright and innocent looking. Everything a lie. I checked my watch. I'd been here nearly 2 hours. Long enough to have done a thorough job, not so long that it would seem suspicious. I gathered my supplies methodically, putting everything back in my cleaning caddy the way I always did. Had to appear normal. Had to seem like just another boring Tuesday cleaning job. The key went back under the flower pot. I loaded my supplies into the boot and sat in the driver's seat, but I didn't start the engine straight away. My hands were still trembling. I gripped the steering wheel and took a few deep breaths, trying to steady myself. That's when I saw her coming up the pavement. Mrs. Patterson, though I'd only seen her once before when she'd hired me. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with perfect hair and makeup. Designer handbag, expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked like any other well-off woman in Brighton, the kind who did yoga and had coffee with friends and drove a Range Rover. She smiled when she saw me, a bright, cheerful smile that made my skin crawl. All finished then? Yes, everything's done. I was proud of how normal my voice sounded. Gave it a proper clean throughout. Wonderful. You come highly recommended, you know. She pulled an envelope from her handbag. I always prefer to pay in cash if that's all right. I took the envelope. It was thicker than it should have been. When I glanced inside, there were way more notes than we'd agreed on. Probably double. That's too much, I said, trying to hand it back. Consider it a tip. She pushed my hand away gently. I do appreciate discretion. Professional cleaners who understand privacy are so hard to find these days. The way she emphasized discretion made it clear what she meant. I'll ring you next week to schedule another clean. Same time, same day. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to refuse. to tell her I was fully booked, that I couldn't take on any more regular clients. But I heard myself saying, that should be fine. Perfect. She glanced toward the house, then back at me. You didn't have any problems, did you? Everything was accessible. No problems at all. Good. Some cleaners get curious, you know. Start poking around where they shouldn't. But you seem very professional. I managed another smile, though my face felt stiff. I just do my job. That's exactly what I hoped to hear. She walked toward her house with a little wave, those sparkly cartoon characters on her doormat grinning up at her as she went inside. I watched until the door closed behind her, then I finally started my car. My hands had stopped shaking by then. Instead, I just felt cold all over despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the windscreen. I drove to my next job in a daze, barely paying attention to the road. A semi-detached and hove, elderly couple who needed help with the heavy cleaning they couldn't manage anymore. Nice people. Normal people. Their house smelled like tea and biscuits, and the weirdest thing in it was a collection of ceramic cats on the mantelpiece. I scrubbed their bathroom tiles and hoovered their carpets, and the whole time I kept thinking about that room. About all those costumes and cameras. About how much planning had gone into making that house look innocent while hiding something so twisted. By the time I got home that evening, I was exhausted. Not from the physical work, but from carrying the weight of what I'd seen. From having to act normal when nothing felt normal anymore. Emma was in the living room watching telly when I came through the door. She jumped up to hug me the way she always did. She's 12 now, thinks she's too grown up for cuddles most of the time, but she still gives me one when I get home from work. Mom, look what Grandma bought me. She held up a new doll, one of those popular princess ones with the long blonde hair. Isn't she lovely? I looked at that doll with its glassy eyes and perfect smile, and I felt sick. All I could see were those costumes on the rack, those cameras in the corners, that bed with its satin sheets. I thought about some little girl somewhere who loved these characters the way Emma did, who had no idea that someone had twisted that innocent joy into something dark. Yeah, sweetheart. She's lovely. I hugged Emma tighter than usual, probably too tight because she squirmed a bit. You all right, Mum? Just tired. Long day. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my husband snoring softly beside me. I kept trying to decide what to do. Should I call someone? The police? But what would I say? I cleaned a house and it had fancy dress costumes and cameras in it. That wasn't illegal, was it? I hadn't actually seen anything happening. No evidence of any crime, just a feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe it was all perfectly innocent. People made adult films, didn't they? That was legal. Maybe the fairy tale theme was just someone's preference. Weird, yes, but not necessarily criminal. Except I didn't believe that. Not really. The more I tried to convince myself it was harmless, the more wrong it felt. That box locked under the bathroom sink. The way Mrs. Patterson had emphasized discretion. The extra money, like she was paying for my silence. I thought about the children who visited theme parks wearing those princess dresses, who watched those films and dreamed about castles and happy endings. How something so pure had been corrupted by people like Mrs. Patterson. The next morning, I rang the cleaning service and told them I couldn't take that house anymore. Made up some excuse about my schedule being too full. The manager tried to convince me otherwise, said Mrs. Patterson had specifically requested me, was willing to pay extra. But I stood firm. I never went back to that house. Never returned Mrs. Patterson's calls when she tried to reach me directly. Eventually she stopped ringing. Sometimes I wonder if I should have done more. Should have called someone, reported something even without solid proof. But I was scared. Scared of being wrong, scared of causing trouble, scared of what might happen if I accused someone with money and connections. Now when Emma watches her favorite films, I have to leave the room. I can't look at those characters anymore without thinking of that house in Brighton, of those costumes hanging in the dark room, of cameras blinking red in the corners. The magic is gone for me, replaced by something ugly that I can't unsee. That cheerful sign by the front gate still haunts me. Welcome to the happiest place on earth. But there was nothing happy about what was happening in that house. Nothing happy at all.